fashion, like time and linear fashion, because as a creature here, it's useful for us to think of the future and the past in order to be able to survive and in order to be able to think just like as an evolutionary creature. That's how we've evolved. We have to see time in that way to be here. But actually, in reality, that's only our perspective, only our perception of reality. It's actually all just there, and we're just experiencing it. That's how we experience it. Otherwise, it's just like that.
It's a system.
Do you know what it is?
A system. Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean, and and I think that's why we're lost at this point in time, and we've got this whole sort of consciousness revolution being called upon from people who have probably had past lives, and now they're coming back and going, hold on guys, we're not really going down the right track at the moment. We've got this scientific outlook, we've got this destructive mentality, we've got ourselves into a bit of a situation where we need to be able to change our consciousness to something of what that it once was, or maybe even a new, more evolved state, to be able to live peacefully, harmoniously on the planet, because it's not going to go well if we don't get to that point. And it does only come back to, no matter what problem, wherever, with whatever, it is all only just about you, yourself. Every problem only comes back to one individual at one point, or two individuals, or whatever, but it comes back to the individual and what's going on inside your belief structure and what you've been taught, what you've learned. You learn bad stuff, you can unlearn it, so it is all about the consciousness of the individual. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but that is the revolution that we need. The consciousness revolution.
If we all felt and managed our own discomfort, not managed, just if we all felt what discomfort we had as in ourselves instead of being externalized all the time, this is the there would be no problem.
No. And that's why self-reflection is so important, and being in touch with that and experiencing. I'm a real believer in experiencing and embracing every single emotion that passes through you. There is no good or bad feelings. It's just emotion, and emotion is what we're sort of here to do, to experience that, and like to embrace an emotion, process it, really feel it with full intensity and appreciation, and then later on you can sort of think, how did my brain or whatever create that, and then work through it, rather than just kind of suppress anything like that.
So I guess in my training, all the training that I've done has brought me back to tools and technologies that I can use to get back to awareness, to see what's coming up, and to integrate it.
You being who you are and learning what you've learned, how do you feel about, I'm talking about the world as a whole, society, humanity as a whole, environmental destruction, yada yada, all these things happening in overwhelmingly probably more of a negative fashion. How do you feel we're going, and what we need to do to be able to pull ourselves, like practical solution to be able to sort of pull ourselves out of this mess? Like Terence McKenna, for instance, like we don't have any more time to be able to teach everyone how to meditate properly and do it all the time. And what we need to do is we need to just do mushroom bomb everyone. just bomb mushrooms on everyone. They have a psychedelic experience. All these egocentric businessmen start bawling, crying, going, "Oh, I've been so bad. Because if there is one thing in this world that can make an egocentric, red-blooded fucking, male businessman that's all only just worried about money cry and shiver in his boots. Females cry and shiver in their boots, and that's a psychedelic experience because their brains are not switched. It's very humbling. You know what I mean? It's a very humbling.
Well, that could be quite destructive.
Sorry, Shaun.
It could take a few people out.
Thank you. You need to tell us that.
And fill up the hospitals, the mental institutes very quickly.
Well, look, as long as they're not out there with nuclear weapons and they're in a mental institution, I'm okay with that. Okay, you know what I mean?
Right. But in your world, maybe not mine.
Okay,
That's okay. We weren't expecting you to agree on that one.
No. But look, that's not my opinion. That's sort of his. But that's Terence McKenna. That's what he
like. Come on.
He said. That's what he said. He goes, we don't have any more time for meditation. We don't have any more time for these people to be able to control their minds. What we need is a fast shot solution,
Yeah.
Throw some mushrooms in the water. Anyway,
I have an answer for you.
Yeah, he has an answer.
I had a question.
I had a question.
I would say for everybody to see that what they're looking at has clues of what they still need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
So what's coming up with me and this person in the shopping, someone just pushes past with their trolley and just doesn't even look at me and just cuts me off, and it's just like, what's that all about?
Yeah.
Instead of getting angry and aggressive towards that person and throwing shit at them, energetic shit, to just sit in my space and go, well, what's going on here? Just inquiring.
Sure,
The thing that after all the shamanic training and all the so-called oneness training, or just going into those realms to navigate and learn more, just looking at the example, like I've heard so many times, the example of the Buddha sitting under that Bodhi tree and just enduring inquiry until he was fully enlightened.
Just sitting there.
Inquiry.
Just asking questions.
Doing just observation.
Asking questions of himself from energy around him.
Maybe not even asking questions. Maybe just being present and feeling and fully feeling what's rising and seeing where it goes.
I like that. Because just that example you said of the shopping centre situation. If we can get our listeners to relate. When you talk about energy and feeling energy and that sort of thing, it's important for people to realise that. Like, for instance sake, you're standing there and then you feel like someone's looking at you, and you turn around and someone's looking at you. You know what I mean? And or something like that. Or we got all these quirks like, oh, someone's talking about it because your ears are burning, or this or that. But that is actually real.
Yeah, the reality of that is unavoidable.
It's actually real. Like someone actually bumps past you. It might have been something that you need to experience at that point. Like.
But energy in
continue,
a room,
please. I need you to continue with that.
But I think that's a really great thing to say is the solution, in that every moment in your life you're presented with an opportunity to learn something and be faced with something about yourself that you need to address and self-reflect and work through. And to be better or to grow in some way. You're always presenting yourself with these things, and if you're aware of who you are and you're present in the moment and you're able to take these opportunities and open for change, I think that's a really good thing for everybody.
Because if we're all one, which
certainly,
if we're all one,
well, we're made of stardust.
You look different to me, and so do you.
Yeah.
So
he is hideous.
So my belief on this is
that
we're all conscious. Like, it comes from some teachings from Adyashanti, who's very much into consciousness and oneness, and presence, and he talks about, like, this is consciousness arising through me to be experienced in a certain way.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And in you, and we all have our certain essence, which maybe we're not, our true essence. And to come into relationship to that, we need to clear the way and be clear enough to hold that space that I'm me, like the Jaguar body, what I was telling you about. Not reactive to everything around me. Totally clear from any ties or any projected reflections,
like there's
of what I need to work
source,
on.
And there's the source is just expressing itself in heaps of different ways, just for fun, to experience. And so, it's expressing itself in that lily over there, and in you, and in me. And the point of it is to get to know itself through all these different little expressions. You have that inner self and inner source there. It's always there. It's always whole and pure and connected to everybody else. But then there's the thing that you're living it through, the thing that you're being expressed through, has its own sort of layers and of living experiences, which sort of often hide the deeper, truer self. And I think it's being able to recognize those layers as a separate thing from what's inside you, and that those layers aren't you. That's just how you've expressed yourself in this time that you've had, and the memories that you've got, and the expectations that you have. And I think being able to differentiate between those two is really important in being, connected to who you are.
And I mean, what do you want to experience? We can do anything.
Well, this is
what's your intention? You might want to do something else that somebody else doesn't want to do, and it's like you have the ability to dance in there and do it and come back. It's like,
well, see, this is a situation because I talk about. Let's say someone was to say, what's the problem with the world and how can we fix it? And I always relate it back to like our operating system. Humans are products of their environment, even though some of us have, might come into this life with a greater, understanding and consciousness. Some are young souls, some are old souls, yada, yada. But, I always relate it back practically to the way that we've set up our society. Now, as we were talking before, the economic system. As we were talking before,
with him, it always comes back to money.
It always comes back to money because if I'm a good person, I want good for my fellow human. Okay, and I like it no matter where they are in the world, wherever, because I believe in oneness as well. So I want good for my fellow human. So I want this system to work in as much of a positive fashion as it could for everyone. And fortunately, I live in Australia, and I have a pretty good run at it. But unfortunately, half the world, 50%, 3.5 billion people are pretty struggling, like intensively struggling to try and just feed themselves and get housing and all the rest. And that's why I relate everything. We were just talking about something then, and I've just forgotten.
About the inner person.
The inner person. When I we say, oh yeah, okay, we're experiencing things on our own level through our own thing, but unfortunately, a lot of people around the world, they are not allowed to experience things to even a standard level of. I'm not even saying everyone should have a mansion and do whatever, but not even a standard level of just food, shelter, medicine. I think
what you're trying to say is that the fight for survival that our simple bodies have to go through to be here to start with is what we get so caught up in, to the point where we are so focused on surviving and getting our bread on our table, and not just with the money system, it's become getting profit and all that. So that whole survival thing is just fed off into this whole, I need to get what I can get. It's all about me. And I think it's that battle between that survival. We've forgotten that we don't need to worry about that. It's more about looking inner. But when you're caught up with just simply living,
but unfortunately,
it's hard.
The majority of people around the world can't even get to that point.
We just, we're caught up in that.
But and where people go, well, that's just industrialization. That's just the way people have to. Those societies have to work to that point to get to our point. Well, it's just not true, because when we're sitting on extreme amounts of positive technology, sustainable technology, which can revolutionise the face of the planet, yet companies hold them back for an artificial means of profit. That is when we start to go, well, we're actually not on the right track. And we need to try and do better.
What do you think about that?
What do you think? I paraphrased a bit. I paraphrased a bit. I can go into more depth if you want. No.
Tell me some more.
Yeah, but
I'm disgusted that the new religion is money.
Certainly.
My friend was talking to me the other day.
Thank you.
My friend Andrew was talking to me, and he came to this real clear conclusion, and we talked, and it was just like, wow, it's sick. Yeah. It's really sick.
It's a belief system, isn't it?
I mean, when I was working for Adidas headquarters for 9 years.
Sure.
As a creative, lead creative for campaigns and all sorts of branding activities.
Cool.
And I travelled all over the world, and I just thought, well, a lot of my stuff, a lot of my creative passion and energy went into creating campaigns and selling stuff.
Sure.
Making it look sexy,
Sales,
making a clear communicative statement of how to sell that in a visual.
Yeah.
So it kind of got me wondering, is like, what got to the point of like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
I was asking me that question, and it was like, money, and it was like, anything else? And it was like, the answer was no.
No,
and it was like, okay, time to move on.
Yeah.
Because I came to that realization that what I was doing was part of the problem at that stage, and it was a big realization, and just it just feels like it's